You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button.
All right, LSU was on the practice field earlier today, and Brian Kelly met with reporters after. And one of the things that Kelly was asked was about Zavon Thomas, the Mississippi State wide receiver who transferred in. Of course, Thomas and C.J. Daniels are the two receivers that have transferred in. Well, Kelly was asked about Zavon Thomas returning punts, and that sort of led BK into a longer answer about their approach on punt returns. Give a listen.
We think he's capable of doing that. But that wasn't the primary reason that we went out and got Zavon. We got him because of his speed, his maturity, his ability to bring SEC experience. Him and CJ, we wanted to bring two experienced, mature players into a group with Kyron Lacey with some younger players. And if he can do the other jobs, that's great too. Look, I'm not going to minimize punt returns, but I think the leading punt returner in the country was like 8 yards. I mean, it's hard. With rugby punting and everybody releasing down the field, college football, the punt return game is virtually non-existent.
So I'm not here to argue against that. Facts are facts and stats are stats, and 8 yards, okay. However, 8 yards, if that's the leading punt returner in the country, and yes, rugby style and all the focus on not returning and safety, all that is so true. That doesn't, though, eliminate the possibility of an explosive play. That doesn't eliminate the possibility of flipping the field, or what if those 8 yards get you one first down closer to a game-tying field goal? I mean, there's all the situations that you could lay out. The thing that is just astonishing when you look at LSU, it has been the inability to get anything out of its punt return game the last 2 years. And the crazy part about it is that's never been anything we've ever had to worry about in Baton Rouge. I mean, if I think back as long as I can remember watching LSU sports, just start with Eddie Kennison. Just start there, right? Start with DiNardo and Eddie Kennison. And think about where you went from Eddie Kennison to Kevin Falk to guys like Dominic Davis and Skylar Green. I mean, the only game LSU lost in 2003 was the Florida game in Tiger Stadium. LSU's touchdown in that game was a punt return for a touchdown by Skylar Green. I get it. That was 2003. It was 20 years ago, 21 years ago almost. But even through the Odell, and think about the DJ Chark punt return, the Odell punt return against Ole Miss, the DJ Chark punt return in 2017 against Auburn. I mean, you all know the plays. It's not to say that it's something that is going to consistently greatly impact the game, but it's not worth negating totally the impact of the game. And it's part of the perplexing part about LSU special teams struggling the last 2 years, because we weren't having this conversation about LSU struggling with punt returns before Brian Kelly showed up. I mean, it's one of the things that has been a conversation, and rightfully so, by the way. And we can all I think unanimously we would all agree that LSU right now is a better program than they were the day Brian Kelly took over, right? That doesn't feel like it's some outlandish statement, okay? Ed Ogeron tanked the program in 2020 and 2021. He got fired. They paid him $17 million to go away. In consecutive years, you went 5-5 and 5-6, and then, or 5-5 and 6-7. You fire Ed Ogeron, you bring in Brian Kelly, you've had back-to-back 10-win seasons. Technically, you were 9-3 back-to-back years. You won your bowl game to get to 10 wins, but you understand what I'm saying. So you've won 10 games, you've had a Heisman Trophy winner, you're recruiting great, you feel like you've settled your staff, all that stuff. So I think that's unanimous. I don't think anybody could argue a point to the contrary. The spot where I think you would also agree with me, where they really missed was not retaining Greg McMahon, because LSU went from being one of the best special teams programs in the country overnight to one of the worst. And that's been 2 years in a row now. You replaced Polian, and while you were better this year, you were still ineffective, largely. I mean, Damian Ramos has done a good job and is stabilized place kicking. Please don't misunderstand me. I think you had some individual good performances. I think Jay Bramblett's a good punter. But your ability to cover, return kicks, functionality, kicking the ball out of bounds on kickoffs, like some of that is just, it's been a problem. Fielding punts last year, that's another thing, right? I mean, I charted this. I don't have my notepads in front of me, and I'm not looking at box scores from all these games, but there were consecutive games against Arkansas and Missouri where you failed to field a punt and lost 15, 20-plus yards of field position. I believe it was the Missouri game where they punted. Missouri punted from inside their own 20. Like, they were punting about their goal line, and you ended up down at like your 8 because they boomed a punt, you didn't field it, it rolled, and then you tacked on a 15-yarder after that. Like, you got to have someone back there who can competently field the punt and advance it so it's not a negative. Maybe that's the better way to say it, is you've lost yardage, hidden yardage in the game, in the punt game, just solely by your inability to field a punt. So even if you can just get me someone that's going to run up and catch it every time, that's better than someone allowing it to bounce and losing yards. It's hidden yardage in a game. So if it's a negative 15 on a bounce and a roll or a positive 5, I mean, that's 20 yards of field position. So it's not necessarily as binary as saying, well, the leading punt returner was 8 yards. It's not only what are you gaining on a punt return, but also what hidden yardage are you preventing your team from losing by not fielding a punt properly. So I don't know if Zavon Thomas is the answer. It's just perplexing because this state has always produced great athletes, and LSU has never wanted for someone to be able to field a punt, to catch and field a punt. So the fact that we're going to a third year now of having this conversation it's uncomfortable because it's just never been an issue before. And I certainly hope it's not again, but you're going to now go into a third consecutive year without a designated special teams coordinator. And, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that that you could look to that specifically and say, well, because you don't have a dedicated special teams coordinator is why LSU has struggled. But I can point to a time where you had a really good special teams coordinator and you were good across the board. He left, and then all of a sudden you were very bad in all these areas. So I don't know if continuing to do the same thing and expecting a different result is gonna bear fruit for LSU. But I can understand Brian Kelly's thought and approach there. And again, it's not an either-or thing. The two aren't mutually exclusive. You didn't bring part of that comment was Brian Kelly saying, we didn't bring Zavon Thomas here to be a punt returner, and I totally understand that. You lost 2,000-yard receivers. You have Kyron Lacey and a bunch of other guys that haven't really played much, so you're able to add 2 veteran receivers. Awesome. I'm all for that. If in addition to that, he can help with the punt return game, great. But even if it's not Zavon Thomas, whoever it is, has to be someone who can competently field a punt, catch it in the air, field it, prevent your team from losing hidden yardage in that game, which we've seen just way too much over the last 2 years.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.